Quiet, normally, but I spent the $2.50 today, Daily Telegraph, Friday, May the 21st. On the eve of the election, virus vetoes vote, so I won't bother about that. Apparently they are allowing people to vote by phone, apparently. Heard that on the radio today. Land down blunder, cops abort a farce. Labor leaders slip up, gives coalition ammo. Morrison's gaffes addressed reporters as Mr. Speaker when making an announcement about healthcare. Yeah, he's a doofus. Footy tackle on a child during a soccer game. Well, that was just an accident. I don't think that's a big deal. Referred to being blessed, I'm not having an autistic child. Now, that is a bit of a big deal. Albo didn't know the unemployment rate, didn't know the cash rate, claimed he was the economic advisor in the Hawke government, forgetting the 6 points of the NDIS plan, had to have a cheat sheet handed to him. Ran from reporters in Perth. No, I think he did all right there. He answered 12 questions, so that's a bit rubbish. Said Australia's borders are closed. Yeah, that was a bit dumb. But I think he was talking about for a set amount of foreign workers coming in. That's what might be why we've got a labour shortage, you know. So by fuckwit James Morrow, Anthony Albanese has made the bizarre claim that Australia's borders are closed, capping off a federal election campaign that will be remembered as much for its gaffes as its policy debates. The statement came during a Wednesday morning interview with ABC Lisa Miller, who asked Mr. Albanese if Australia's historically low unemployment figures proves Scott Morrison's case that the coalition was a better manager of the economy. Our borders are closed, Lisa. Our borders are closed, Mr. Albanese said, despite Australia's borders reopening to international visitors 3 months ago. People are doing it tough. That's having an impact on employment figures. We know that's the case. We want an economy that works for people, not people working for the economy. Mr. Albanese later claimed that he meant to say that the borders were closed, a policy which Labor supported throughout the pandemic, but not before the clip was widely shared. Liberal sources said that there was a strong possibility the incident will be used in last-minute online campaigns, which are still permitted despite the ban on political ads on radio and TV. Gaffes and slip-ups have been a hallmark of the Labor campaign, with Mr. Albanese opening his campaign unable to name the unemployment rate. Well, yeah, there has been a few slip-ups. I don't think anyone could argue with that. A later incident saw him unable to name the 6 pillars of his NDIS policy, which led him to be an advisor handing him a piece of paper containing the key points in front of cameras. However, Labor supporters are quick to point out that Scott Morrison has made his share of mistakes. Yeah, look, Scomet's idiot. Like, he's been idiot for 4 years, so I mean, Albanese making a few mistakes in the election campaign, really. A week into the campaign, Mr. Morrison appeared to think he was in Parliament when speakers were speaking to reporters, peppering them an announcement about health with the phrase, Mr. Speaker. At the Sky News People's Forum debate, Mr. Morrison copped criticism when he said, Jenny and I have been blessed. We've got 2 children who haven't had to go through that, in response to a question from an audience member with an autistic son. However, Liberal Senator Holly Hughes, who also has a son with autism, defended Mr. Morrison from his critics, saying there are times you don't feel particularly blessed, but that his critics should find something substantial to be upset about. When asked later if incidents such as Wednesday's comments about borders might lead some voters to question if he was up to the job, Mr. Albanese said, I would ask, is this government up to anything? All this government has is little games. They don't have a plan for the future. Sounds about right. Opposition costing's higher than government. Now that's 7.4 billion. That's fuck all in a scheme of 1 trillion debt. By Claire Armstrong, Courtney Gold, a Labor government would send Australia's budget 8.4 billion further into the red over the next... What's the 7.4 over there? So what's the extra billion? The opposition released its long-awaited election policy. That was yesterday. It claims, 7.4 billion higher than the March budget, but the coalition has saved 1 billion since then. Labor's pre-election policies have been costed at 18.9 billion, offset by 11.5 billion in savings, including a tax on multinational corporations. That's a big one. Over the next 4 years, Mr. Albanese said Australians will see a return on Labor's spending very quickly, but would not give a specific timeline. He said that Labor had prioritised investments that would not push up inflation, which is currently expected to reach 6.1%. The way that you can boost wages and boost profits without putting pressure on inflation is by making sure that you boost productivity, he said. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? The measure that we aimed at here, whether it's childcare, whether it's clean energy or skills and training, are precisely those. The Labor campaign yesterday backflipped on an early unprecedented attempt to shield Mr Albanese from scrutiny over his costings by sending his travelling media pack to Canberra, where Labor's Treasury spokesman Jim Chalmers and finance spokesman woman Katie Gallagher handed down the figures, while the Labor, they didn't like that. They couldn't be at two places at once and attack Albo and attack the costings, like the Labor's budget, you could call it. Faced with protests from the journalists, Mr Albanese ultimately took questions on the costings during a campaign stop in the Liberal-held Queensland electorate of Dixon, while Mr Chalmers outlined the plan from Canberra. That's ironic, isn't it? Because Chalmers from Brisbane. Anyway, the modest $7.4 billion difference between the two budgets is made up of key investments in childcare, investments in training, education, investments in cleaner and cheaper energy, he said. He said Labor would inherit some of the trickiest economic conditions of any new government since World War II, including $1 trillion in debt, but would repair the budget by cutting waste and mismanagement. Ms Gallagher said if elected, the party would go line by line through the budget to identify any further potential savings. This is a responsible approach to budget management, she said. Coalition costings released on Tuesday included a proposed increase with public sector. You can pause if you want to read that. I can't be bothered reading that. Well, the last bit. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said voters faced a stark choice this weekend. Labor are going to do is increase the deficit by $7 billion. When we released our costings, we were reducing the deficit by $1 billion. I don't know if that's really going to be a big thing that people vote on, for or against. Do you?